The first time I saw her, I thought she was broken. No, seriously. I genuinely believed this human female had suffered some catastrophic neurological failure. She sat in the corner of the diplomatic lounge on Station Kepler 9, her body folded into one of those ridiculous chairs her species insisted on bringing everywhere. You know the type, 4 legs, a back that curves wrong, completely inefficient. Her name was Mira Voss, according to the station manifest. 28 solar cycles old, assigned as a cultural liaison to the Veren Trade Consortium, which meant essentially she was supposed to smile, nod, and make sure we didn't accidentally insult each other into a war. A job so boring that even our most meditation-inclined species would rather stab their own sensory stalks than endure it, and she just sat there. For 3 hours. I am Kix. I belong to the Thrinodi, a species known across 17 systems for our exceptional hearing. We can detect a heartbeat from 40 meters away. We can hear the subtle shift in breathing that indicates a lie. We are, without question, the finest auditory processes in the known galaxy. So when I tell you that Mira Voss sat in that chair for 3 hours without moving, I mean it literally. Her heart rate never varied. 62 beats per standard minute. Her breathing remained constant. 16 breaths per minute, each one identical to the last. No fidgeting, no scratching, no adjustment of posture. She simply existed. Is the human malfunctioning? My colleague Pren asked, his tail fins twitching with concern. Pren was Aquilian, which meant he barely understood the concept of stillness. His species swam constantly, even in their sleep tanks. I believe she is in a meditative state, offered Hask, our Varan supervisor. He was trying to sound wise, which was hilarious because Hask had the intellectual depth of a moisture panel. Humans have been known to practice contemplative techniques. For 3 hours, Pren's voice hit that high-pitched frequency that indicated he was distressed. Without water, without nutrition, without even a bathroom break? Valid questions, honestly. The diplomatic summit was scheduled to last 2 weeks. 17 species, 43 delegates. One massive station floating in neutral space, filled with beings who mostly hated each other but needed to pretend otherwise for economic reasons. The usual political theater. Mira Voss was one of 3 humans in attendance. The other 2, Marcus Tennant and Yuki Sato, were actually interesting. They networked, they negotiated, they laughed at our jokes even when they clearly didn't understand them. Normal, diplomatic behavior. But Mira? She attended every session, sat in her designated spot, and became part of the furniture. Day 3 of the summit, I decided to test something. During the morning session on mining rights, which was exactly as thrilling as it sounds, I positioned myself directly behind her. I wanted to observe more closely, maybe catch some micro-expression or subtle movement that would explain her bizarre behavior. Nothing. The back of her head might as well have been a painted picture. Her dark hair, tied in what humans call a bun, didn't move. Her shoulders stayed level. Even her clothing, a simple grey jacket and black pants, seemed to lack the normal wrinkles that come from a living being wearing fabric. You are staring at the human. The voice came from my left. It was Seka Mulverim's security officer. Her species had 4 eyes, so she noticed everything, which made her incredibly annoying at parties. I am observing, I corrected. Observing requires a reason. I am trying to determine if she is actually alive. Sek's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Her metabolic signature is normal for her species. Temperature, respiration, cardiac function, all within acceptable ranges. Then why does she just sit there? Why do you care? Good question. Why did I care? Maybe because in a station full of preening diplomats and self-important trade ministers, her complete lack of performance was the most interesting thing happening. Or maybe I was just bored. The incident happened on day 7. We were in the middle of a particularly heated argument about agricultural export tariffs. The Varan delegation was accusing the Korath Union of price manipulation. The Korath were countering with allegations of quality fraud. Voices were rising, which in a room full of species with varying auditory ranges meant a cacophony that could shatter eardrums. Hask stood up, His scales flushed orange with agitation. "This is preposterous. Our grain shipments have been certified by independent inspectors you paid," shrieked Korath Minister Valin, her wings spreading in a threat display. And that is when the first shot was fired. Well, not a shot exactly. More like a pulse weapon discharge that turned the decorative water feature behind the Korath delegation into a cloud of superheated vapor. Everyone started screaming, diving for cover, activating personal shields. Everyone except Mira Voss. She stood up, calmly, like someone getting out of a chair to answer the door. Her face held no expression. Her hands stayed at her sides. 3 more pulse discharges lit up the room. I was crouched behind an overturned table with Pren, who was making a noise like a dying engine. Security alarms wailed. The lights flickered to emergency mode. Through the smoke and panic I saw her walk, not run, walk, directly toward the source of the weapon's fire, which any sane being would recognize as the opposite of survival behavior. "Is she insane?" Pren gasped. I didn't answer because I was too busy watching Mira Voss move through the room like she was on a casual stroll through a garden. A Thixian delegate ran past her, screaming. She stepped aside without breaking stride. A piece of ceiling tile crashed down 2 meters to her left. She didn't even glance at it. The shooter was Drask, a low-level assistant from the Korath delegation. Later we learned he had gambling debts, and had been paid to cause a disturbance. He was crouched behind the speaker's podium, weapon raised, firing randomly into the crowd. Mira walked right up to him. Drask saw her coming. He swung the weapon toward her. I heard myself shout a warning, though what good that would do, I have no idea. What happened next took approximately 4 seconds. Mira's left hand moved in a blur, slapping the weapon barrel to the side. Her right hand struck Drask's throat. Not a punch. Something more precise. He made a choking sound and dropped the weapon. She caught it before it hit the floor. Then she kicked his legs out from under him, and as he fell she placed 1 foot on his chest and pointed the weapon at his face. All in 4 seconds. Her expression never changed. She might as well have been filing paperwork. "Stay down," she said quietly. Her voice was so calm that it took me a moment to process that I was hearing her speak for the first time since the summit began. Drask wisely stayed down. Security arrived moments later, hauling Drask away in restraints. Medical teams rushed in to treat the minor injuries. Delegates clustered in groups, voices overlapping in a dozen languages, as they processed what had happened. And Mira Voss walked back to her chair, sat down and returned to being invisible. "Did anyone else see that?" Pren's voice was barely a whisper. "I saw it," Seth confirmed. Her 4 eyes were all focused on Mira. That was not normal human behavior. "What was it then?" "I have no idea." The summit continued, because apparently attempted murder is just a minor inconvenience when trade agreements are at stake. But everything felt different now. People kept glancing at Mira, whispering. The other human delegates looked as confused as the rest of us. I approached Marcus Tennant during the evening meal. He was picking at something that looked like it might have been food once. "Your colleague," I said, trying to sound casual. "Mira Voss. What exactly does she do for your government?" Marcus looked uncomfortable. "She is a cultural liaison. Like me. Cultural liaisons typically engage in cultural activities. Talking, networking. She does neither." Mira is quiet. Some people are. Quiet people do not disarm armed attackers with their bare hands. He set down his utensils. "Look, I only met Mira 2 weeks before this assignment. She transferred in from another department. I do not know her history." "Which department?" I was not told. That night I did what any curious being would do. I searched for information. Station Kepler 9 had limited access to external databases, but I had enough clearance to pull basic personnel files. Mira Voss. Born Earth, Northern Hemisphere. Education records, present, but vague. Employment history, a series of administrative positions across various human colonies. Nothing remarkable. Nothing that explained how someone moves like a trained killer while maintaining the emotional range of a wall panel. I was missing something. Something important. The answer came on day 9, in the form of a video file. One of the station techs, a young Threnody named Kess, was reviewing security footage from the incident. Standard procedure documentation for the official report. But Kes was new, inexperienced, and he made a mistake. He played the footage at half speed. I happened to be walking past the security office when I heard something off. A rhythm that did not match what I remembered. I stopped, looked in through the open door. On the screen, slowed down. Mira's movements became clear. What had seemed like simple self-defense in real time was revealed as something far more complex. Every strike was precise. Every movement was calculated. The angle of her hand when she deflected the weapon, the exact point on Drask's throat where she struck. The way she positioned herself to control his center of gravity. "Play it again," I said, stepping into the office. Kes jumped, startled. "Senior analyst kicks. I did not hear you approach. Play the footage again, normal speed this time." He complied. In real time it looked almost effortless. Casual, even. But now that I had seen the breakdown, I understood. This was not someone who got lucky. This was someone with extensive training. Someone who had done this before, many times before. "Has anyone else seen this?" I asked. "Only the security chief. And now you send me a copy." "I should not, Kes. Send me a copy." He did. That night, I watched the video 17 times. Each viewing revealed new details. The way Mira positioned her feet before moving, establishing a perfect base. The way her eyes tracked Drask's hands, reading his intentions before he acted. The complete absence of hesitation or fear. This was not a cultural liaison. Cultural liaisons do not move like weapons. The next morning, I found Mira in her usual spot. Same chair, same posture, same infuriating stillness. I sat down next to her. She did not acknowledge my presence. "I watched the security footage," I said quietly, speaking in standard so others would not understand. 17 times. Her heart rate did not change. 62 beats per minute. That was very impressive. Also very revealing. Nothing. She might as well have been a statue. So I have questions. Many questions. Starting with, who are you really? And what are you doing at a trade summit? For a long moment silence. Then without looking at me, she spoke. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. "I am exactly who my credentials say I am. Your credentials say you are a cultural liaison. Your skills say you are something else entirely. Skills can be learned. Not those skills. Not to that level. You move like someone with years of combat training. Possibly decades." Finally, she turned her head. Just slightly. Just enough that I could see her eyes. They were brown, unremarkable, except for one thing. They were completely empty. No emotion. No reaction. Nothing. "You should stop asking questions," she said. "Should I? Because, from where I am sitting, it seems like the human government sent someone very dangerous to a very boring diplomatic function. That suggests they expected something to happen, which means they had intelligence about a threat, which means this entire summit might be compromised. Or," she said, turning back to face forward, "it means nothing at all. Perhaps I simply enjoy trade negotiations." "Nobody enjoys trade negotiations." The corner of her mouth moved. Just barely. It might have been a smile, though calling it that would be generous. "Then perhaps I am very strange." She fell silent again, and I knew the conversation was over. But as I walked away, one thought kept circling my mind. Mira Voss was here for a reason. And whatever that reason was, it had nothing to do with agricultural tariffs or mining rights. Something was going to happen. Something that required a human operative with killer instincts hiding in plain sight. And when it did, I had a terrible feeling that what I had seen in that security footage was just the beginning. The second attack came on day 12, but I am getting ahead of myself. Let me back up, because the 3 days between my conversation with Mira and the real incident were possibly the most paranoid 72 hours of my entire life. I started noticing things. Small things. Things that a normal person would dismiss as coincidence. But I have never been normal. My mother always said I had the unfortunate combination of excellent hearing and terrible judgment, which meant I heard everything and jumped to the worst possible conclusions. For example, on day 10, I noticed that Mira always positioned herself with a clear line of sight to all exits. All legs. Whether she was in the conference hall, the dining area, or the recreation lounge, she chose spots that gave her maximum visibility and multiple escape routes. Also, she never ate in public. Never. I watched Marcus and Yuki consume meals with various delegates, building relationships over shared food like proper diplomats. Mira would appear at social functions, stand in corners and then vanish before anyone could offer her a plate. Maybe she has allergies, Pren suggested when I mentioned this. We were in the observation deck, watching ships dock and undock from the station. To everything. Every single food item from 17 different species. Some humans are very particular. Particular is choosing not to eat Korath fermented grain paste, which smells like decomposing footwear. Particular is not refusing all sustenance in public spaces. Sake, who had joined us without invitation because she was nosy, clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. She eats. I have seen her requisition meal packets from the automated dispensers. She takes them back to her quarters, so she eats alone, I said. Why? Because eating makes you vulnerable, Sek said quietly. Your attention is divided, your hands are occupied, your digestive system is engaged. For someone who needs to maintain constant awareness, eating in public would be unacceptable. Pren's tail fins drooped. That is a very depressing way to live. That is a very tactical way to live, Sek corrected. I spent day 11 trying to access more information about Mira's background. I called in favors. I bothered friends in intelligence services. I even attempted to hack into human personnel databases, which was stupid because human cybersecurity is insane. They are paranoid about their data in ways that make our most secretive species look like they post their passwords in public forums. Nothing. Every search hit a wall. Every inquiry got deflected. It was like Mira Voss existed only as a name on a manifest, with no history, no past, no trail, which meant someone very powerful had scrubbed her records, which meant she was definitely not a cultural liaison. That night, I received an anonymous message on my personal comm. No sender identification, no routing data, just 4 words. Stop looking, trust her. I stared at that message for 20 minutes. Who sent it? How did they know what I was doing? And why should I trust someone I knew nothing about? I deleted the message. Then I kept looking anyway, because I have never been good at following instructions. Day 12 started normally. Morning session on technological exchange protocols. Absolutely riveting stuff. I spent most of it watching Mira watch the room. Her eyes moved in a pattern, left to right scanning faces, then exits, then back to faces. Every 90 seconds the same pattern, like clockwork. Lunch break came. I was in the dining hall with Pren, choking down something the station chef claimed was food but tasted like regret. Have you noticed the Varan delegation acting strange? Pren asked, his voice low. I paused mid-bite. Strange how? They are tense. More than usual. Husky's been having private meetings with station security, and this morning 3 Varan ships docked. Military vessels according to the registry. Military vessels at a trade summit? That is what I said. But when I asked about it, Husk curled me it was routine protection, increased security after the incident with Drask. I set down my utensil. Pren, if you were planning something at a trade summit and wanted to bring in military assets without raising suspicion, what would you do? I would stage a minor attack first, make everyone nervous, then bring in heavy security as a reasonable response. We looked at each other. Oh no, Pren whispered. Oh yes. We found Sek in the security office, reviewing surveillance feeds. She looked tired, which for a Mulveron meant her scales had lost some of their luster. Please tell me I am being paranoid, I said, without preamble. About what specifically? Sek did not look up from her screens. About the Varan military presence? About Hask's behavior? About the fact that this entire summit feels wrong? Now she looked up. All 4 eyes focused on me. You are not paranoid. I have been monitoring communications. The Varan delegation has been in contact with someone off-station. Encrypted channels. Very sophisticated encryption. Can you break it? No. But I can tell you it is military grade. And the transmission patterns match protocols used for coordinating tactical operations. My stomach which was already unhappy about lunch, decided to stage a full revolt. They are planning something, that would be my assessment. Do the other delegations know? If they do, they are not sharing with station security. Pren made a small squeaking noise. Should we evacuate? Cancel the summit? Alert someone. Alert who? Sick asked. Based on what evidence? Encrypted transmissions are not illegal. Military vessels providing security is unusual, but not prohibited. All we have are suspicions, and one human operative who disarmed an attacker with terrifying efficiency. I added, what if she knows? What if that is why she is here? Six stood up, all four eyes now showing an emotion I had never seen from her before. Fear. Then we need to find her. Now. Mira was not in the conference hall, not in the dining area, not in any of her usual spots. We checked her quarters. Empty. We checked the recreation facilities. Nothing. Where would you go if you were preparing for an attack? I asked Sek. Somewhere with a vantage point, somewhere I could see the primary targets but remain unnoticed. The observation gallery, Pren said suddenly. It overlooks the main conference hall. Elevated position. Multiple sight lines. We ran. Well, Pren and I ran. Sek moved with that unsettling Mulveran speed that looks like teleportation, but is actually just very efficient leg coordination. The observation gallery was a narrow corridor that circled the upper level of the conference hall, mostly used by junior FARs who wanted to watch proceedings without actually participating. The lights were dimmed, the space was empty, except for one figure, standing at the railing, looking down at the hall below. Mira turned as we approached. Her expression was as blank as ever, but something in her posture had changed. She looked coiled, ready. You should not be here, she said quietly. What is happening? I demanded. What are the Vorans planning? Nothing you need to worry about. People might die. People definitely will die if you do not leave. Now, below us the afternoon session was beginning. Delegates filed in, taking their seats. I saw Hask at the front, looking pleased with himself. Too pleased. They are going to kill someone, Sek said, her voice tight. Specific targets. This was never about trade negotiations. This is an assassination. Mira did not confirm or deny. She just kept watching the hall below. Who are the targets? I pressed. For a long moment she said nothing. Then the Karath Minister Valen and the Thixian Ambassador Grieve. They recently formed an alliance that threatens Voran economic interests. Remove them, blame it on summit violence, install more cooperative leadership. That is insane. That is politics. And you are just going to stand here and watch. She finally looked at me. Really looked at me. And in her eyes, I saw something I had not seen before. Not emptiness. Purpose. No, she said. I am going to stop it. Below, Hask stood up to give the opening remarks. Standard diplomatic nonsense about cooperation and mutual benefit. But I could see it now. What I had missed before. The Varan guards positioned at strategic points. The way they kept glancing at each other. The subtle repositioning that put them within striking distance of Varan and Grieve. There are 12 guards, Sek said, clearly counting. All armed. All trained. You are one person. 13 guards. Mira corrected. You missed the one by the environmental controls. And I am not alone. What does that mean? On cue, Marcus Tennant stood up from his seat in the hall below. Then Yuki Seto. They moved casually, like they were just stretching their legs. But I noticed they positioned themselves near 2 of the Varan guards. You are all operatives, I breathed. The entire human delegation. Cultural liaisons, Mira said, with that almost smile. We just have very specific cultural expertise. Hask finished his remarks. Minister Valen stood to respond. That was the signal. I saw it happen, in slow motion. The Varan guards reaching for their weapons. Hask dropping to the floor, taking cover. Mira vaulted over the railing. I shouted something. Prin screamed. Sick, cursed in a language I did not recognize. Mira dropped 3 meters, landed in a crouch on one of the support beams, then launched herself toward the nearest guard. She hit him before he could draw his weapon, using his body as a springboard to reach the next target. Below, Marcus and Yuki moved simultaneously. Marcus disarmed a guard with a move I could not even follow. Yuki threw something small and round that exploded in a flash of light and sound, disorienting half the room. The conference hall erupted into controlled violence. And I do mean controlled. The humans moved like they had rehearsed this 1,000 times. Every action was precise. Every target was neutralized efficiently. No wasted movement, no hesitation. Mira fought like she was dancing. If dances involved breaking arms and inducing unconsciousness, she flowed from one opponent to the next, using their own momentum against them. A guard swung at her. She ducked, grabbed his arm, used his weight to throw him into another guard. Both went down hard. Should we help? Pren asked weakly. Help? How? With what? I was pressed against the railing, watching with horrified fascination. Minister Valen and Ambassador Grieve had been pulled to safety by their own security. Smart. The other delegates were scrambling for cover, which was also smart. Station alarms were wailing, which was loud but unhelpful. One of the Varan guards managed to get off a shot. The pulse blast went wide, destroying a decorative panel. Mira closed the distance between them in 2 strides, disarmed him with one hand, and put him down with an elbow strike that made me wince from 3 meters away. Hask tried to run. Marcus caught him at the door. There was a brief struggle. It ended with Hask face down on the floor, Marcus's knee on his back, hands secured behind him with some kind of restraint device. Yuki was handling 3 guards at once. 3. She moved like water, flowing around their attacks, striking pressure points I did not even know existed. Within seconds, all 3 were on the ground, groaning. The entire fight lasted 90 seconds. When it ended, 12 Varan guards and Hask were unconscious or restrained. The human operative stood in the center of the hall, barely breathing hard. No visible injuries, not even winded. Actual station security arrived then, late as always. They looked around at the aftermath, clearly trying to process what had happened. Mira walked calmly to where Minister Valen was huddled with her security team. She spoke quietly, too quietly for me to hear from above. Valen nodded, said something back. Then Mira turned and walked toward the exit like she had just finished a routine task. She paused at the door, looked up at the observation gallery, looked directly at me, and winked. Then she was gone. The next 3 hours were complete madness. Station security detained everyone for questioning. Intelligence officers from multiple species arrived to investigate. The Varan government issued immediate denials, claiming Hask had acted without authorization. Nobody believed them, but diplomatic fictions must be maintained. I gave my statement. Pren gave his. Sec provided surveillance footage, which was probably the most damning evidence. The video clearly showed the Varan guards preparing to execute 2 delegates, and the human team preventing it. Marcus and Yuki were professional throughout their interviews. Polite, cooperative, providing just enough information to satisfy investigators without revealing anything actually useful. Mira was nowhere to be found. Her quarters were empty. Her access logs showed she had left the station approximately 30 minutes after the incident. No destination recorded. 2 days later, I received another anonymous message. Thank you for your concern. Thank you for not interfering. Some battles are best fought by those trained for them. Stay curious, geeks. The galaxy needs observers like you. Below that, a single-line addition. P.S. The chair was actually very uncomfortable. I laughed, actually laughed out loud, which startled Pren so badly he dropped his datapad. The summit concluded early. Nobody wanted to continue trade negotiations after an attempted double assassination. Most delegates left within 48 hours. The Varan delegation was recalled to their homeworld for intense questioning. Hask was charged with conspiracy to commit murder and about 17 other crimes. Minister Valen and Ambassador Grieve survived. Obviously, they held a joint press conference thanking the human government for their timely intervention. The official story was that human intelligence had received advance warning of a plot and sent in a protective detail disguised as diplomats. The official story was, for once, basically true, which was refreshing. I never saw Mira Voss again. I searched for her name occasionally. Nothing ever came up. She had returned to whatever shadow she came from, presumably to sit quietly in another corner, watching another room, waiting for another moment to move. Sometimes I think about that final wink, the tiny crack in her perfect stillness. Proof that underneath the blank expression and empty eyes, there was a person, someone with humor, someone who appreciated an audience. But mostly I think about how she sat among us for 12 days, unremarkable, unnoticed, while planning and preparing for a fight that could have killed her, while watching us watch her, knowing we suspected but could not prove anything. Humans, I have learned, are terrifying not because they are the strongest or the fastest or the smartest. They are terrifying because they can be all those things while appearing to be none of them. They can sit perfectly still for hours, making you think they are harmless, and then move like weapons when necessary. They call it the human survival instinct, the ability to adapt, to blend, to become whatever the situation requires, prey or predator, depending on circumstance. I call it something else. I call it the reason why, when humans offer to send cultural liaisons to your diplomatic summit, you should probably just accept that some of them will be trained killers in disguise. And honestly, after what I witnessed, after seeing Mira Voss and her team prevent a massacre, I cannot even complain about it. The galaxy is a dangerous place. Trade negotiations are boring until they are deadly. And sometimes the quiet person in the corner is exactly what stands between civilization and violent collapse. She sat among us, unnoticed, until the moment we needed her most. And then she was exactly what the situation required. I still think she was probably broken in some fundamental way. You do not develop that level of combat skill, that degree of stillness, that capacity for violence without sacrificing something essential. But maybe that is what heroes are. Broken people who broke in useful directions. Or maybe I am overthinking it. Maybe Mira Voss was just very good at her job. Either way, I am glad she was there. Even if that chair really was very uncomfortable,